Are recording. Hello, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for our first ever International University Month at Los Altos High School. I'm Daphne Adler, I'm one of the counselors here. We started this last year with International University Day/Night, and this year I was hoping to expand the workshops we were able to offer. And although I was envisioning having this in person, working virtually has had the very cool silver lining of allowing us to connect with a lot more universities. I was blown away by the response that we've gotten from university admissions representatives from all over the world who were thrilled to participate and share their institutions with us. I'm happy to tell you that over the next month, you'll have the chance to learn about 30+ universities from 4 continents and 12 countries. This is an incredible opportunity for our students to think outside the box for their college admissions. Although we have a few thousand options here in the US, there is a whole world beyond just our country and a lot of awesome reasons to consider it. I invite students to imagine a college experience that is exciting, unique, adventurous, and culturally immersive, completely different than anything you would find in the US, no matter where you are in the world. In addition to the information you're going to hear tonight, consider that admission practices and requirements in other countries are generally more transparent than here, which offers students a way to opt out of the madness of American admissions process. You're going to hear a lot about it and you're going to go, wait, what? It's that easy? And it really truly is. So I'm really excited for all of you to hear all of this info. Students can look at the entire schedule of sessions throughout October in Naviance or on the College Career Center website. Please register yourself so that we know you're coming. And for those students applying to UK schools who have been asking about help with the UCAS application, tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. Is our UCAS workshop. So make sure to sign up for that as it's a great opportunity to learn about all the details. It's really different than US application, so check that out. All the sessions this month are delivered by international reps, so it is a great opportunity to learn not just from your counselors here, but from the source. Before we start, just a little webinar housekeeping. This presentation is being recorded and we'll be able to view it later, but please hang out with us so you can listen and ask any questions. We'll have a Q&A at the end, and please use the Q&A function in Zoom rather than the hand raising. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Stuart Floyd from Bond University in Australia, and he's going to introduce our panelists and get our presentation going. Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks very much, Daphne. Good evening, everyone. G'day from Australia. As Daphne mentioned, my name is Stuart Floyd, and I'm the International Regional Manager with Bond tonight. I'm joined by several of my colleagues from all around the world in different locations. I'm just going to get our presentation going here. Excellent. And so tonight our focus is essentially looking at where do we start with international education? As Daphne has just mentioned, there are so many different options around the world. You obviously have great options in the US, but when looking outside of the US, where do you begin? So many different countries, different continents, different universities. Are there universities that are based in the US but have a college campus overseas? Are they a truly international university? All of those sorts of different things. So we're hoping tonight that we can give you the benefit of our experience working with international universities, as well as just some general information to help get you started on the right track. Sounds like you have a fantastic month coming up, and we're excited to be part of that as well. And you'll get lots more detailed information. Tonight, we're going to focus on general information. So we're not going to go into specifics about countries. We're also not going to go into specifics about our own institutions. We're going to talk generally about a whole range of different topics that will hopefully give you, again, that good foundation on which you can start exploring your international studies. So we're going to have these nice transition slides between each of the sections. This is my home country, Australia. You can't tell by the accent, I am Australian. And obviously all of the great things that everybody knows Australia for. So tonight, I'm joined by several of my colleagues. We have Patrick Smith from the University College Dublin in Ireland. We have Ashley Sevadjian from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. We have Kelly Nuibe from Temple University, their Japan campus in Tokyo, Japan. We have Laura Thompson from the University of British Columbia up in Canada. And we have Maaike Trobman from IE University in Spain. So you can see here, we've got even a couple of different continents represented, and obviously a lot of great experience. So to begin, I'd like to hand it over to Maaike.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. So again, transition slides, some beautiful photos I threw together of Spain. I won't go too much into the specifics, but it's an amazing country, very open-minded, very well diverse, cultural, many languages spoken there, second most visited country in the world. But let's continue to the next slide, Stuart.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So a little introduction. So the first thing we wanted to get out of the way, I think, is the hot button or hot topic this year about what universities have been doing. Something that I'd like to point out is each institution worldwide is going to be handling it a little bit different. So it's really important that you go to their websites. Most institutions will also have like a COVID-19 information page. So whether that's they're doing some kind of hybrid format where they're doing in-person or virtual, or what steps are necessary. But the good news is that international education is still continuing, even though we are globally affected by what is going on. What's also really important to kind of keep note too is not only are the institutions going to be doing it or handling it a little bit different, but each country. So they do have to follow health protocols, safety protocols, via the government of that country. So for example, if you're looking to study in Canada, they are still welcoming international students, but currently, as of right now, it could change any day. Australia is closed the borders to international visitors and students. So again, do a little bit of research. You do have us here to help you, so we can definitely help you maneuver through that. And then as a resource, always check the government resources. It's a great way to get all of the information, and they're pretty good about keeping the information current as well. Great, so I would love the next slide. I know it might take a second. Awesome, so why study internationally? Why are we all here? There's so many reasons and advantages to study your degree in a different country. One, you get to explore a new world. You really do become a global citizen. You get to explore the country, maybe possibly learn a new language. You have global friends. You also kind of mature a little bit faster, and you become a little bit more of an independent adult. You are exposed to a wide variety of educational and professional opportunities. One of the biggest benefits about studying in Europe is that we're very, very hands-on and very practical in our teaching methods. Most courses or programs that you would be applying into are going to have internships built into their program. They're going to have mentorships. You'll have more access to be, working with different companies. And so that exposure allows you to kind of practice a little bit more of where you want to go as a career path rather than waiting until you graduate. I don't want to say some institutions are easier to get into, but I think Daphne really touched on a good point, is we're very transparent in our admissions process. We tend to be a bit more holistic. We look at not just your grades, but who you are as a person, what extracurricular activities, and really do treat you like a person. You're not a number, just us. And that really makes our campuses really unique. And, having international students, learning new languages, being able to have access to travel. For example, in the EU, you can travel within over 50 different countries without there being any issues between the borders. So you can take a train from like London to Paris or vice versa. So the experience is different, but it's definitely going to prepare you skills-wise for the job and the future, and it's a great time. So I think that's it for me on my end, and I think I'm going to hand it over to the next presenter.
Fantastic. Yep. So next we have Patrick. Thanks, Patrick.
Perfect. How's it going, everybody? My name is Patrick Smith, and I'm here with University College Dublin in Dublin, Ireland, which is a country just under 5 million people altogether. And here's just a few snapshots of some of our 9 universities in the country. Perfect. So I'm a very firm believer that everyone and anyone who wants to study abroad should be able to study abroad. But just kind of looking back at maybe some of the students that have thrived the most when they were studying abroad, these are some traits that really stand out to me. So first off, like Maaike was mentioning, you're going to gain a lot of independence when you're studying abroad. You're going to be on your own for a good part of the transition process. You know, whether you're flying internationally or, you know, if you're driving north to Canada, a lot of that is going to be pretty much on your own, or, you know, in kind of smaller groups. You know, you may not be going to an international university with a lot of your friends. You know, you may be the only person from your state in some cases. So it kind of forces you to mature a bit faster. And something as well, it makes you very flexible. So whether that's, you know, opening up an international bank account or getting a new international SIM card for your phone, you know, just kind of new experiences that maybe you wouldn't experience if you were going to a college domestically in the US. We also find that students who look to take healthy risks, emphasis on healthy, are a good fit for studying internationally. I'm thinking about, you know, when I was studying abroad, kind of having that yes and attitude of, you know, always being willing to try new things, to go see a new country, to hop on a plane and maybe take that weekend trip to some place that you've never even heard of before, you know, maybe not familiar with the language, just kind of keeping your horizons as open as possible. We also find that students who are comfortable communicating with strangers or maybe taking some initiative on their own tend to do very well when they're studying abroad. Again, you know, you're going to be with a lot of people that you've never met before. Maybe there'll be a language barrier, so students who have that kind of you know, interpersonal initiative to ask for help tend to succeed when they're studying abroad. Depending on what country you're going to, you could be very, very far away from home, you know, multiple time zones. So just the ability to function successfully far from home. You know, I was thinking about when I was studying abroad, there was a 6-hour time difference. So kind of planning your day and, you know, communicating with loved ones and family back home to still keep that communication open for sure. But just being a bit more mindful that, you know, you are going to be in another continent. So maybe planning ahead a bit more. It will be a different college experience. So for example, you know, a lot of schools don't have Greek life or, you know, big football games on the weekends, but they have other things to keep you occupied and to kind of enrich your college experience. So, you know, in Ireland, when I was there, they were doing Gaelic football games or hurling matches or traditional Irish music sessions. So, you know, different kind of things to keep us entertained, but definitely, you know, not what I was expecting coming from a US college with, you know, Greek life and football. And again, going along with kind of that yes and attitude, people who are just excited to get out there and experience a foreign culture, meet new people, and, you know, maybe try to learn a new language and just really expand their international network. Oh, sorry, and then the last one, my apologies. Students with a language proficiency, you know, it's not a requirement at some universities. You know, a lot of universities teach in English, but, you know, for kind of travel aspects and, you know, if you wanted to get to know some of the locals, it always helps to have that language proficiency and, you know, occasionally with kind of ease of travel, possibly having dual citizenship as well. Now, there are some challenges. It's not always perfect whenever you're going abroad, but it can be challenging. You know, you're, like I was saying before, you could be the only person from your high school, from your state, at your campus. And so, you know, it can be a little bit lonely sometimes. So, you know, it definitely kind of takes a little bit of that initiative to go out, meet new people and try new things. Like I was saying before, again, about the student life, it will be different, you know, no fraternities, no sororities, but just kind of different student groups, different student activities. Some campuses may have more of a commuter style campus where, you know, Monday to Friday or Monday to Thursday, it's a little bit busy, but maybe on the weekends it clears out. So, being able to, plan some things on your own, or maybe go travel on the weekends, are just some different ways of still having an exciting student life on campus. The language proficiency, again, depending on where you go, this could be an issue. If it's a language that you've never experienced, that could definitely pose some problems, both academically, but also socially. So that's just another thing to keep in mind, depending on where you choose to study. If you do encounter any of the following, one thing that's great about study abroad is that, there are multiple different ways to experience it. So, whether it's going to a full degree internationally, or doing a study abroad semester, or, a summer study abroad experience, there are different ways to study abroad. So, if there's any kind of physical or mental health condition, or if you're kind of feeling some maybe anxiety about being very far away from home, those are just some things to kind of think about, before you kind of make that big leap to do a full degree abroad. But what's great is that no matter where you go, there's a lot of support. There's a lot of people that want to help you. So just kind of being able to ask for help is always a great first step. And I think that's it for me. So I'm going to pass it on over to the next person.
Excellent. Thanks, Patrick. And over to Ashley.
Hey everybody, my name is Ashley Sevadjian. I work with the University of Glasgow in Glasgow, Scotland. I did my undergraduate degree in Scotland. It's a really beautiful country, but I'm going to talk to you today a little bit more about what Patrick mentioned about, how you can incorporate some element of international experience or overseas study, and what different programs are available for you internationally. So you can always do your full 4 years abroad at an institution outside of the US. But if you're not really sure if you want to spend, your entire degree experience overseas, you could always attend a home institution, but maybe look for one that has a really good network of study abroad partners across the world, so that you can still incorporate that overseas experience into your education. So most study abroad programs will last for 1 semester or 2, but there are some programs out there that are even longer. So it's worthwhile when you're looking at home institutions within the US that you kind of ask questions about what their study abroad network is like, so you can get an idea if that's right for you. Some American universities also have campuses abroad, which is really great for a student who is maybe nervous about the curriculum structure that you might get at an overseas institution, or maybe you want to have that liberal arts experience overseas. So there's so many options available. And of course, there's always graduate programs as well. So one good thing is that many programs overseas, you might find that graduate programs are only 1 year in length instead of 2, depending on the country that you're looking to study in. So it's definitely worthwhile keeping it in mind that if you don't know if 4 years overseas is right for you right now, there are so many different ways that you can still have a global experience as a student. But in terms of, the student's major, so just on that next slide here. So when students choose a major overseas, oftentimes you'll find that many overseas institutions ask you to apply directly to a major. It does depend on the country, so there are still some liberal arts and undecided pathways that you can do overseas. It just depends on the institution, but by and large, it just depends. But usually you'll be applying directly to a major, which is great for a student who knows what they want. But you might find that in some countries there's less flexibility to change. But it's worthwhile researching that degree structure in the country that you're planning on studying in as well, just so that you know whether or not you can really grow with your degree and tailor that experience, or if you can change majors. So that's something else to kind of consider, that when you go to study overseas, you might have to choose your major when you apply. But I think that's all for me, so I'm going to pass you over now to Japan.
Hey, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Nuibe. I represent Temple University Japan campus. So hello, live from my virtual tea house in Tokyo. There are many options in Asia as well, just to give you an overview, and a lot of programs are in English, so I highly recommend you think about it. And so now you're thinking of, okay, I'm ready to go overseas, but how does it work? Well, every situation is different. There are different universities and countries with different admission requirements and policies, so make sure you connect with the admissions counselor, the rep. We're people, we're very nice people, so don't be afraid to reach out and ask us questions. A lot of times you have the email addresses ready where you can just contact us 24/7. We may not reply right away, but we will when we wake up. Every school is different. Some schools are American universities, so they have the American University GPA system. Other ones are, they follow a different system, and so you may not know what your GPA is calculated into that system. So nice plug-in for Daphne. Tomorrow is the UCAS workshop. I would say if you're interested in going to the UK, you should probably attend that workshop and learn more about how you can recalculate everything. For schools in non-English speaking countries, there may or may not be a language placement test. Most of the programs though that you're looking at, most likely they're going to be English programs, in which case they don't require you having proficiency in that foreign language. It's more that you would take a placement exam if you're accepted, and then you're encouraged to study the foreign language in that country. But again, it may differ, it depends on the program you're going to. If it is a sort of dual program where you will be expected to take lectures in that foreign language, then of course you would need to show proficiency. One thing to note is to do your research early. Cannot stress that enough. I would say make a portfolio, have each tab for a different university, and keep track of your deadlines. This is very important to note because a lot of countries might require a visa application for you to study in our country. And that in itself can be another process. Typically it's done in the spring, in which case you would do your your admissions application in the fall semester. So it could be a year-long process, and you're gonna think, oh my gosh, that's a lot to do. But as long as you're on top of everything and organized, and you do things in advance, it will be no problem. Moving on. So now you know you want to go, now you know how you can go, but how much does it cost? Well, every country has a different tuition rate. Some countries actually offer college for free, which is pretty awesome. And other colleges, actually offer tuition at a much, much lower rate than the US. Definitely reach out to the admissions counselor and ask them about what the rate is for an international student. You are a US student, but if you're going abroad, the rate might be different. Sometimes the rate is the same for all students, but it's actually still lower when you compare it to a university in the US. So in many cases, it's cheaper for you to go out of country than it is to go out of state. Also think about the factors of if you have dual citizenship, that might also help you in terms of financial benefit. As an example, I sometimes get US-Japan dual citizens, and so they are able to use financial aid. So that's another thing that leads to that other bullet point, is you might be able to use FAFSA at the university. One tip I have is when you go to the university's website, usually near the top somewhere, there's a search bar. I recommend you find that search bar and just type in financial aid or type in FAFSA, and you should be able to navigate to that university's page on FAFSA. They probably will also give you the FAFSA code, the university code, on what you can use when you fill out your financial aid. By the way, guys, FAFSA has opened up, so make sure you apply early. Okay. Some universities offer international scholarships. Other universities offer scholarships based on merit, so not based on your nationality. It does vary. Make sure you do your research. Again, having that portfolio and taking notes for each school helps and goes a long way. And of course, there is a factor of cost in terms of travel and living expenses. It can be different if you're in the city or if in your country. But I can say you guys are in California, which is pretty high. It's pretty expensive to live in California. So you might find it comparable to other cities around the world. Obviously, you do have to factor in that cost of flying over. Which can be pricey. Some of the students in Japan, they usually only go home once a year because of that, because they want to lower their costs. But as a sort of compromise in the summer semester, instead of going home, they'll actually take short trips to neighboring countries around. And so that's a very good way for you to take advantage of your location, is to go and explore the world. And with that, let's fly to Canada.
Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Thompson. I represent the University of British Columbia, just a short 3-hour flight from San Francisco. But I'm also today representing Canada. So we're just north of California up in Canada. Unfortunately, right now we do have closed borders. But hey, international students are still able to come up and study if they need to be on our campuses. And just kind of rolling off what was just said in terms of cost, I won't say many things right now because there is a Study in Canada session, but if you're a dual citizen with Canada, you can qualify for the domestic tuition rate at all Canadian public schools. So just tune in for the Study in Canada session for more of those facts. But moving along, you've decided that you want to go to an international school, but you're thinking now, where actually would I be living? Are there going to be dorms offered? Is it mandatory? Those types of questions might be flourishing through your heads. And truly, you have to say that it really is going to be varying depending on your countries. So many schools and many countries will offer housing arrangements. So it's just going to be what style of housing arrangements you'll have. So it's specifically in Canada, I can speak that many of our universities offer traditional dorms, and those are equipped with a cafeteria, and then upper year campus, on-campus housing options are typically available. But often most residences might not be mandatory for students, as that is often the case in the US. And we often see many more single rooms compared to like the classic doubles that you see at other American institutions. But it's definitely going to be varying. There's some schools throughout the world that will be apartment style as early as your first year, where you're going to be cooking all on your own. So it's really, it's important to just ask your admission reps, what style of housing options are there? Is it guaranteed in my first year? What type of cost is it going to be like? And those questions are definitely easily answered by myself and the fellow representatives here. But moving on, so if you now know where you're going to live, you want to kind of think about, how am I going to adjust in this new country? What types of supports are available to ensure that I'm successful in my studies? And we do want to be clear that no matter what country you pick, there will be some sort of international student advising or support office. So basically every school will have these advisors in place. Typically they'll be equipped to support you with any immigration questions you might have. Maybe you have questions about the healthcare options, or just as simple as like transitioning into life in a new country. Counseling services, for the most part, will be offered at most institutions, and this can help with mental health. And additionally, if you're thinking more about your academics, you'll be able to find advising services, tutoring services, so you're successful in the classroom. But moving more to a student-centered approach when you're thinking about supports, you'll typically find a regional specific student-run club of some sort. So at UBC specifically, we have an American Students Club. So it's a more general club. If you come from the US, we see students joining that to get together and talk about various Americanisms and be part of a like-minded group. But you can also find that most universities will have career services and supports as well. So when you're thinking about the job prospects, you can start connecting with advisors in that area. For the most part as well, you're going to find that there are going to be alumni networks across the world, and these are going to be physical and virtual, either at your universities that are international or in a virtual landscape. So those are great access points. And I know Maaike spoke about this right at the very beginning, but something I do really want to instill when you're thinking about studying abroad is we're living in a really globalized world right now, and internationalizing your education, it's going to increase your employability. There are many companies that release reports every year that when companies are doing recruitment, they're really looking for cultured and global employees. So really, by studying abroad, you have that access and that exposure to a diverse and a multicultural setting. You're going to be mature. And these are really attractive characteristics for employers. So just something to think about. And I know that's not technically a support, but it's just a great thing to think about when you're thinking about studying abroad. But that is all for me. I think I will now pass it off probably to Daphne, who will go over what types of workshops we have for the rest of the year. Or maybe it's Stuart, not sure.
Yep, fantastic. Thanks, Laura. So yeah, look, definitely just, obviously we've got some great information there generally about studying internationally. I've always said to people, the best thing about studying internationally is you get the visiting aspect of taking a vacation or going on holiday somewhere, but you also get the living aspect of being in a new culture, in a new location where you actually get to engage with that culture and you get to be part of that culture and you get to learn about the culture. Most importantly, you get to learn about yourself and new challenges and all those sorts of things that we've talked about. So yes, you can come to Australia or you can go to the UK or you can go to Canada for a vacation, and in 2 or 3 weeks you can see the country. But when you're there for say a semester or anywhere up to 4 years, you really get to be involved in that country. You get to live there and you get all the benefits of what it means to be living somewhere else and exposed to all those different and new experiences. So, as you can see, tonight's been quite general, but as Daphne has mentioned, there are some fantastic workshops coming up over this International University Month. So those are all the workshops there. So a lot of us will be presenting from tonight in our regional workshops, and definitely we encourage you to attend those if you've got even just a little bit of interest in that part of the world, in that region. As we heard from everyone tonight, language should not necessarily be a barrier to the vast majority of international institutions. There are so many programs all over the world, in countries in Asia, in Europe, all over the place, where programs are taught in English, and they really encourage international students to come and take those programs. So we encourage you to maybe step out of your comfort zone, especially at the moment while you're doing your initial searching and looking at the different programs. Go and learn about programs in Asia. Go and learn about programs in Northern Ireland, in mainland Europe and other places like that, and really just see what's available. I think what's most important right now, though, is for us to do a Q&A session. So as Daphne mentioned, please use the Q&A function in the system, and we will work through those now. So we've just got a question here, Daphne, probably one for you to answer in regards to how students will be able to join the other Zoom meetings, such as the UCAS workshop tomorrow.
Oh, sure. Great question. Okay. So, first of all, before I answer that, just so you know, the slide that you're looking at right now, that photo, I took that in Wales when I was on a Wales counselor tour 1.5 years ago. It's phenomenal. So, yeah. Okay. So the question is, how to join other Zoom meetings and the UCAS workshop. So, these are open to Los Altos and Mountain View High students, and you can preferably sign yourself up in Naviance, so we know you're coming. So you would just go to the college rep visit list and sign yourself up there. And the links are also available on the College Career Center website. Like either way you can access it, but we would love to know you're coming, and that's at 8:45 tomorrow. And then you can see the entire schedule as well in both of those places. So sign yourself up for any of the upcoming workshops throughout the month. And the other thing you can sign yourself up for is some of the reps have scheduled a full-length college rep visit for their school. We've already had a couple, like Stuart was here representing Floyd, representing Bond, excuse me, a couple weeks ago. Laura was with us as well, and there's some upcoming ones too. So there's like a huge variety of ways to find out more. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Daphne. So another question we've just had. So the question was, I thought there was a requirement to have an IB certificate. Any comments? Does anyone want to maybe comment on that in regards to international admissions? Perhaps Patrick?
Yeah. So for most universities, again, correct me if I'm wrong, you can just apply with your US high school diploma, you know, if you're taking APs or, you know, any kind of ACT or SAT standardized test, you can apply with those. So it's not a requirement that you have an IB diploma. And, you know, if anyone has anything else to add, please feel free. But from just kind of your normal US high school diploma, as well as some other tests that you're taking and some other scores you may have, generally that is enough for entry.
Yeah, and then I'd just like to add something too. There is a big difference between the IB certificate and the IB diploma. So the IB diploma is that you've studied the full IB curriculum, you are receiving the diploma, you're taking the test, whereas the certificate is you're taking certain standard level, higher level classes, but you're not going to be getting that diploma. So what's really important about the distinction of that is some universities only accept the IB diploma because it is a full accredited diploma where they can accept a certificate. But just to kind of echo what Patrick said, most universities worldwide understand that when international students are coming from different countries, that those education systems are going to be different. So if you're studying a US high school diploma, you know, we typically take APs, but they'll definitely have and accept those different kinds. There's also the lycée schools here, the French baccalaureates in the US, and many, many other different kinds of education systems that most international schools accept just because they have a huge international student body. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I'll quickly add to that as well. If you just have if you have your high school diploma, you're on track to getting that and you're going to get the IB certificate. So as Maaike said, take a few courses in the IB curriculum. Check with the school because sometimes universities will accept transfer credit for those IB credits. So it's definitely something to look into.
I think the big point here to note is that all of our universities and all international universities, when we deal with international students, we have really experienced admissions teams, and they are used to doing equivalencies across multiple different qualifications and countries with regards to how your qualification, whatever it may be that you have, then sort of calculates into the home country's qualification where that institution is based. And so in a lot of cases, it will work directly across. In some cases, you may have to do foundation or other types of programs, but the good thing is that you don't need to change anything about what you're doing. We do the assessment, we do the calculations, and we'll work with you. And that's why it's important always to have those discussions with the institutions and the reps, because we can then also, we can speak both languages. We're bilingual. We talk our own university in our own country's language, and we also talk your language as well. And we can tell you what how it's going to work between the two. Great question. Okay, another question. How could students evaluate Australian admissions offers when they'll be required to accept offers from US schools before graduating from their senior year? I don't think this is just an Australian university thing. This actually might apply to multiple different countries where there are going to be different admissions timelines, different admissions processes, different offer processes, etc. In reality, a lot of it is going to come down to exactly where you want to go and weighing up your different options. So, for example, in the Australian context, yes, a lot of universities won't start, our academic year starts at the beginning of the calendar year. So our academic year in Australia usually starts February or March. At the same time, though, you can usually apply at any time before you finish high school. So you can usually apply in your last semester of high school. I know for several other different countries, they have similar time periods as well. Obviously, UCAS has their own process in terms of when you apply. Does anyone else also want to jump in with sort of their region-specific information there?
With IE University in Spain, we actually have rolling admissions just because we're extremely international, and different countries graduate high school at different parts of the year. So for example, Venezuela, they finish high school in December. So they finish high school and graduate in the fall. Whereas us here in the US, we graduate and finish high school in the spring. So rolling admissions is also another factor of when you're looking at different schools, that there might not be set deadlines like the UCAS system, for example. So, you know, that could also, you know, just keep that in mind as well.
I can speak really briefly about Canada. We follow very similar to the US timeline. Our application deadlines are sometimes a little bit later. Most schools are not early action or early decision schools. The bulk of offers come out between April and March, but we do minds by the May 1st deadline that's so well known in the United States. So we definitely try and follow our neighbors in that area.
Yeah, and it's similar. So in the UK, the UCAS deadlines they kind of follow a similar admission cycle. So students will submit their applications from mid-October until January. And then normally students will start receiving their offers anytime from January up until March, and you have until the start of May to decide whether or not you accept that offer or not. So it's kind of, it lines up nicely. The University of Glasgow is rolling admissions all the way till June 30th. So some schools in the UK are also rolling admissions. So just keep aware of that as well.
Let me add one more thing here. So if you are applying both in the US and internationally, as most of you know, you have to commit to a school in the US by May 1st. If you are still considering options abroad, and you might be, because like Ashley was saying, that like the UK schools, international students can still apply until June. And so if you still have some open offers, pretty much what you would have to do is accept an offer in the States and put down your deposit just so you secure your place. And then if you decide to take another offer internationally, you would forfeit your deposit. So that is unfortunate, but you know, if you can often align all your admissions so that you don't have to do that. But worst case scenario, yeah, you would forfeit a deposit that you put down by May 1st if you decide to go a different direction. Good question.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway here is it's nice and easy to apply internationally to school, at least. Let's get that done with. For the majority of schools, you can apply. There's rolling admissions. There's real flexibility for international students. So that shouldn't really be the concern. It's then just making sure, as Daphne's just mentioned, then that you're securing any place that you need to by the time you need to in the US, but with ultimate flexibility internationally.
Right. And one more thing I thought of too, if you are not super thrilled with your American offers around March or April, guess what you can do? You can still have tons of international options. If you maybe hadn't thought about that or weren't too sure and you just didn't do it, you still have time to do that. So super, super flexible.
Great. Okay, great question. I might just jump to the last question just quickly. And so the question here, Mr. Beginning, yes, international study we're talking about is for college, so after high school. And when is a good time to start applying? Well, I think we've talked, hopefully in answering that previous question, and covered the different times to start applying. Generally, my rule of thumb personally is once you've got your first semester grade 12 results, that's usually enough for international universities to be able to assess. Obviously, it's going to be different for each country and each location. Does anyone else want to jump in and add anything further on there in terms of when to apply? Maaike.
Usually, so I recommend it, or I mentioned earlier that we have rolling admissions. And so that means that you do have the flexibility of waiting to apply maybe early in the year, like January, February, March at the latest. But what I usually do is, because I'm working with students that are coming from the US, I typically like them to follow the American system, so they get all of their applications in, whether it's for US schools or international schools, around November, December at the latest. And the reason why is because of financial aid and scholarships. So if you're looking to apply to any of those things, that's going to come after you found out that you have been you've been given the conditional offer, the acceptance into the school. So that might be a stipulation. But then also, if you know that you're going to be hearing back from US schools, you might want to align that so you have all of your eggs in one basket. So that way you kind of know, okay, been accepted into these international schools, because we are quite transparent in our admissions process, and we do let you know earlier, typically than April, maybe March. But then that way you can make the best decision, sit down with your families and talk about that, and then also have those financial aid and scholarship applications already submitted, so you really do know what the best decision and option is for yourself.
So just to add to that, if you guys are interested in Japan, traditional Japanese schools, their calendar system starts in April, but because they realize that a lot of students coming outside of Japan are under a typical calendar system starting in September, their English track programs will be in September. So for you students in California, typically fall semester is when you start applying. My advice to you is to look up the visa application deadline as your sort of guideline and work backwards from there, because especially in this sort of situation, processing visas may take slightly longer than usual. For Japan, we're looking at 2 to 3 months processing time. And that's just, you know, thinking, and where things could change, things could get faster. But think of it that way and work backwards. Okay, the visa application is due here, so I'm gonna turn in my visa application 3 months in advance, which means I'm going to apply 3 months in advance. And by the time you know, it's probably gonna be like December when you actually turn in your admissions application.
And oh, sorry, go on.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I was just going to say from the Irish universities, you know, much like the others, you know, you can kind of follow that US timeline, applying October, November time for scholarships. One thing I will advise is, you know, if you do apply before you get your first semester results, or, you know, if you're waiting on any AP tests, just to kind of stay on top of those, and to make sure that, you know, once you receive those final scores, or once you receive those mid-year grades, that you send those on to the university. You know, if you do have a conditional offer, and it's, you know, conditional upon getting X, Y, and Z grades, sometimes if you're applying for visas, or if you're applying for any kind of on-campus accommodation, having a conditional offer doesn't allow you to do certain things. So you have to make sure that you're sending in all of your final documentation, all of your final test scores as soon as you receive them, just to make sure that you are staying in line with, you know, receiving your full offer, and making sure that you're getting everything done ahead of time.
Great. And I want to just piggyback on a couple of things. A few minutes ago, we were talking about planning ahead a bit. And I think that really depends on, you know, what countries you're looking at and what the requirements are. So like, for example, in the UK, they rely more heavily on testing. That is a bit problematic for us this year, right? So schools are trying to figure that out right now. But at the same time, they can be flexible. So it could be like SAT or ACT or APs. If you have not taken APs and you're a senior and you have not taken SAT or ACT, that might be a bit tough. Whereas if you are a sophomore or a junior and you are thinking ahead that this might be something you want to do, you can plan your coursework ahead a little bit and make sure that you fit in enough APs, right? Or community college classes will sometimes work. So it just kind of depends what type of schools you're looking at and what they require. So it is helpful to look ahead a bit. That being said, there are often options that you can look at. You know, if you're a senior and hadn't thought of it before, a lot of times you can still do it, especially if you do have some AP work on your transcript. So that's first thing. And second thing, we've mentioned conditional offers a few times, and I don't know that everybody knows what that means. Can somebody just speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so basically a conditional offer will be issued before you completed grade 12, or it might be issued based on the fact of you having to complete a certain requirement. So for example, let's say you apply in the January of grade 12, you've got your first semester grade 12 results, and we'll assess that and we'll say, great, it looks like you're on track. So we're happy to send you an offer, but it's conditional upon you completing grade 12 and achieving X, Y, Z results. So it might be achieving 2 AP scores in this range, or it might be achieving a grade 12 GPA of a 3.5 or better, just as an example. But there's going to be a condition or something that you need to prove to us that you've met for that offer to stay valid. Usually it's quite straightforward, so it's nothing to be worried about. If you keep doing what you're doing, we don't put the conditions on there to stump you or to stop you from getting in. They're just conditions to make sure that once you do have that offer, you don't just go, yay, I've got an offer, I don't have to go to school anymore. And it's just to make sure that we keep you on track and that we know that you're a good student when you come to us, whenever you start with us.
Yep. And if you guys get a conditional offer, know that it is guaranteed. Like, as long as you do it, the university can't back out of it. That's the same in the UK and Ireland. It's pretty cool, and you have until the end of senior year. So it's not like all those things have to be done by the time you're applying. So it's super flexible.
Exactly.
Great, thanks, Stuart.
No worries. Look, there's been a lot of information that we've given in the last couple of questions. I know even myself here as a university rep, my head's spinning a bit at the moment with all the different things and the different options and the different start times and application times. The best thing to think about is don't stress about it. I know that's easy to say and harder to do, but you've got some really great sessions coming up over the next couple of weeks. Attend the sessions, ask questions. We are here to answer those questions. The only dumb question is the one that never gets asked. So make sure you do your research. Also, as Kelly and everyone has mentioned today, it's really good to, before you even dive into asking questions about admissions and those sorts of things, stop and have a think about what it is that's important to you about your post-secondary education. Have a think about the countries where you might want to study, and then put together a bit of a shopping list and say, okay, in these countries, I want to maybe look at institutions that are regional instead of city-based, that are going to have these types of programs instead of those programs, and come up with a bit of your own kind of list of what you're looking for. Once you've got that set, then that's going to make it a bit easier for you to then do some targeted research, to ask some targeted questions, and put together your matrix of when application dates are open and close, when offers can come out, and all of those sorts of things. And that can help you make a little bit more sense of this whole process, because there are literally thousands of institutions and possibilities out there. And it really comes down to what are the ones that are going to be best for you and that meet the needs that are most important to you as a student as well. So try and focus on that to begin with, and then everything else will come from there. We're here to help. We're here to make this process as easy and as straightforward as possible. Cool, got a couple of extra great questions coming up. So one here, can people that are citizens from a foreign country but haven't lived in that country for a very long time apply as an international student? Might need some more clarification on this one, unless someone in the panel understands what's being asked here and can perhaps jump in.
I might. So this, I mean, when you are a citizen of another country, you have that passport, or you hold that passport. So you can always apply with what passport you hold, even if you have dual citizenship. But the other point of that too is some schools don't really mind which passport. There are a lot of students here in the US that have not 2, but 3 or 4 passports. And the question is, which one do I apply with? It depends on the school. If you are looking into a school in Italy, for example, and they have some financial aid benefits for Italian students or residences, it might make more sense strategically for you to apply with your Italian passport, even if you haven't lived there in a long time. That's not a big deal. But then there are also some other schools that have an incredible international student body, and they don't necessarily look at passports because maybe everybody who is going to that school pays tuition prices and has the same access to scholarships and financial aid from that specific institution. So again, it's going to be a little bit of research, reaching out to one of us. We're, Stuart said, we're always happy to help. We're very transparent. We love helping you guys. So I think, going back to what he said, is make a list of what kind of countries are appealing to you, and kind of going from there, and then deciding and reaching out and seeing which passport, or if it even matters when you apply to a school.
Something from the Irish perspective too, if you are assessed as an EU applicant, there is a separate application portal or separate application pathway for EU citizens. And they actually find out if they've been accepted to a university in August. so just a few weeks before the term starts. So, if you do think that you may be considered an EU applicant, if you're applying to an Irish university, you really do need to figure that out pretty soon, because that can have some pretty big consequences for how you apply, and ultimately when you hear back with an admissions decision. So.
And to add to that, as Maaike had mentioned, transparency is important. Communication is important. I had a student who told me in September, I'm applying for a green card, but I don't know when I'll get it. And I said, okay, that's great. For now, on your application, put down what your current citizenship is, and we'll keep monitoring, keep connected. And then when he did get accepted, a few months later, he said, I got my green card. And I said, okay, great, let's change your records now, because we want to make sure that, the visa process goes smoothly for you, and then you might be able to get financial aid. So make sure you tell the admission counselor what your situation is.
Excellent. Excellent. Some great answers there. Okay, next question. Just going back to conditional offers. Does the conditional offer have information on your cost of attendance? Absolutely. So conditional offers are just the same as a normal unconditional offer. So everything that you would normally see on an unconditional offer, so your tuition costs, it is your enrollment contract with the institution. So all of that information will be on there. And of course, if you do have any other questions about your offer or about the cost of attendance, then of course, talk to your university representative, and they'll be more than happy to give you that information and help you decipher all of the details that are on that offer document. Excellent question. Daphne, just another question in regards to the workshops and recordings and those sorts of things. I think you might have answered this one in the chat, but perhaps if you'd like to just give us a quick rundown on that for everyone who's here.
Yes, okay, so the daytime workshops are for Los Altos and Mountain View High students, and they are actually not scheduled during class time. They're scheduled at lunchtime and during office hours, a few after school and a few before school. So we were very conscious in not scheduling them during class so that students are not missing Zoom classes and other things with their teachers. It should work for our students pretty easily. Recordings, some of them are going to be recorded. I don't know that all of them will be. So if you are interested in any particular sessions, I definitely encourage you to go live. Plus, then you can ask whatever questions that you have. So, either way, I think that's preferable. But
Fantastic.
This webinar will be.
Excellent. Okay, great question. How many applications should one student submit internationally? Who would like to answer that question?
Oh yeah, I was going to say in the UK, if you're applying through UCAS, you're limited to applying to up to 5 UK schools if you're submitting through UCAS, but a lot of schools are also on the Common App. So some students often wonder if they can use up all of their 5 choices on UCAS and then apply on the Common App as well. There are ways around it, but we always say in the UK, it's typically 5 that you can apply to. But internationally, worldwide, I don't know what my colleagues here think, but I would say, Scott, as many as you want, but maybe somebody else can weigh in.
I mean, I think the real question is, why so many? There are a lot of great choices out there, but not every choice is a good fit. So it really, especially when you're looking at schools that are international, one thing that you really do have to consider that was mentioned earlier is you have to claim a major right away. So for somebody who thinks they want to go internationally right away, but they have no idea what they want to study, they don't know if they want to go to business or science school or medicine, international studies might not be for you, but an option would be a study abroad opportunity. But if you do know you want to study business or you want to go into nursing or medicine or whatever it is, and that is something that you are set on, that's going to narrow that search a bit more. And then it goes into location. Location is key. So if you see yourself up in the UK because you love the accents and you have always wanted to visit the places because a lot of Game of Thrones is shot there, then, why not? But if you always wanted to consider Australia or, different parts of Europe because of the easy access to travel, Again, that really goes back to just making your list and figuring out what places are important to you. And then consider, even if you are in those places, for example, Europe, you have access to almost over 100 countries that you can get to in just a couple of hours. So you have that benefit as well. So don't let choosing one place kind of stint you in a way, let it expand the horizon, and you just happen to be really fortunate to study somewhere internationally, but you get to travel on top of that as well. And y'all are so stressed about getting into school. You'll get into school. So, you know, be confident. You've got Daphne and Laura to help you. We're happy to help you. So don't go too crazy. Find schools that are a good fit, and find countries that you kind of already, are a little smitten with, even if you haven't been.
Yeah.
Totally. And just to add to that too, those of you who are within our district, your counselor meets with you every year, and we have this conversation every year, right? All about finding the right fit. So this is no different, even though we're talking international, all those same things still apply in terms of like what kind of city setting and what size of school and all those sorts of things. And if you show up to your counselor with a list of like 30 colleges in the US, your counselor is going to say like, whoa, that's a lot of schools. That's a lot of essays you're writing. So again, same thing. You really want to like narrow it to the places that you think you really might want to be, because it's a ton of work as well. It's a ton of like moving parts and details to keep track of, and lots of deadlines and lots of essays. And I can tell you, our seniors every fall underestimate how much work their college apps are going to be, even just in the US. And like the essay for UCAS, completely different than the Common App. So you really want to consider also your bandwidth for these applications. And granted, some of them you can stretch into the spring semester, which makes it a little bit easier, but this is not meant to add more stress. It's meant to expand options, but it does take time because you got to research and reach out to people. But I hope that what you guys have taken away from this is how open and welcoming all these countries and these schools are. Like everything that our reps have said tonight is like, come to us, right? Like ask questions, come find out. So you're not committing to anything by coming to the workshops. It's just coming to listen and learn and ask questions. So we really want to see you guys in these different workshops throughout the month. There's so much just amazing stuff to find out about.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Look, Laura, I think you wanted to answer a question here. How many years does a student have to live in a country to be considered as a domestic student before applying?
Yeah, this is a pretty common question we'll hear from American students, because sometimes in the US, if you are out of state and you go to another state to study, you can possibly stay in that state for the summer, live there, and actually gain in-state tuition because you're technically a resident of that state. So this is a pretty common question. If you move to another country, maybe I come and move to Canada for maybe a year before I go study in university, will I be a Canadian citizen? Can I get the domestic tuition rate? And the short answer is no in Canada. And I think probably for the most part, permanent residency typically does not qualify you for in-country or country-specific tuition. It might be different country to country, but in Canada specifically, and I know a good handful of others, you would have to be a full citizen of the country to be eligible to get that tuition benefit, if there is a tuition benefit for domestic students. So,
yeah, great answer. Okay, thanks to the student who gave us that bit of extra context in regards to the previous question about being a Spanish citizen, haven't lived there for 10 years, want to apply to a Spanish college as an international student, so you don't take a certain entrance exam. It's going to depend on, I see Maaike there laughing, and probably the best one answering that one.
Yeah, so one thing that you really have to consider is you're not studying the Spanish system. So you're not studying Spanish high school, which means you're not taking the selectividad, which is the test that you're talking about. It's a very, very difficult test. I know all about it. But because you're studying an American high school diploma and you're coming from a different educational system, you're going to be applying with that education system, which means that you don't have to take that entrance exam because it's not part of your education. Each school in Spain is going to be different. I don't see them requiring you to take the exam, but IE University, for example, you'll just apply with your high school diploma, and we don't even ask for AP exams. We just look at your transcripts. So I think that hopefully answers it a little bit more directly into the specific question that you were speaking about. But because you're coming from a different education system, you don't have to take the test for the Spanish high school degree, because you're not getting a Spanish high school degree, you're getting an American one.
Great. So a lot of the time, the admissions criteria and what we're assessing is what you've done. So if you graduated from an American high school, then we're going to assess your American high school credentials. That's going to be our focus. Okay, excellent question coming up. Do many schools have requirements specific to the major? So certain APs, SAT subject tests, grades in a certain subject. That's not necessarily going to be dependent on the school, but it's going to be, as you've mentioned, dependent upon the major. So there are going to be definitely programs with prerequisite subjects that you'll need to have completed. For example, if you want to get into, say, something like engineering or a medical type program, then more than likely you're going to have taken a middle to high level of math. You're going to have taken a chemistry or a physics, or something that is going to give you that foundational knowledge to be able to then step up into a university level qualification. So it is going to depend. A lot of the time you will find the prerequisites being required for the more STEM subjects, so your science, technology, math, those sorts of things. But it's important to check with each of the majors or programs that you're looking to study to see if they do have any prerequisite subjects. In some cases, there may be cutoff scores where you need to achieve a certain GPA in order to be considered for entry to the program. In some cases, there might be subjects or certain SAT levels or results that you need to gain as well to have your qualification assessed as equivalent to someone from that country. So it's going to depend on the university, it's going to depend on the country, it's going to depend on the major or the program that you pick. But again, that's what our university websites are really good for. You can always jump on there, and we're really transparent. So if you're looking at, say, the Bachelor of Engineering or something like that at an Australian university, it will say entry requirements and prerequisite subjects, and it'll say assumed knowledge or those sorts of things in there as well. And each country, each university is going to have that information pretty available for you.
That was a really good answer, Stuart. One more thing to add, and I used to be a teacher, so that's why I got to wear that cap. If you take AP courses, do well in them. If you're going to do it, commit to it and try to get a good score, because otherwise it's kind of a waste of time if you go through the whole year of taking that course and then you don't do so well on the exam. So if you're going to take an AP course, make sure you do well in it.
Brilliant. Well, look, I think that's the end of all of the questions that we have this evening that have come through. There have been some fantastic questions that have come in, so thank you very much for your participation. Hopefully that information and everything that we presented tonight has given you some real enthusiasm to go forth and look at international study options. The options are endless, but at the same time, they're just fantastic in terms of what they offer you, in terms of personal growth and opportunity. And keep in mind as well that the decisions you're making into grade 12, into your senior year, they're not the last decisions you're going to make about your education. Education is a lifelong pursuit. And so this is just your first step, your first choice that you're making in terms of the study that you might end up doing or the institution you're going to attend. Many people will go to different countries, to different universities, and take many different qualifications throughout their life. So don't be too stressed about making this the perfect be-all and end-all choice. Make this the choice that suits you right now. Do your research. And as I said before, really have a think about what's important to you. Take control of this decision and really think about the things that you're looking to have in your experience and then go after them. Because as Maaike mentioned, you will get into university. You will get into programs. There are so many choices and options out there. And it's just a matter of finding the ones that are the right fit for you. And if you do try something and it doesn't quite work out for you, you can always change. You could always look at a different program at a different university, at a different major, at a different country. There are so many opportunities available to you. It's just about working out what the right fit is for there. So look, from me tonight, and I think from everybody else, thank you very, very much for coming along. Daphne, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great. Yeah, we're going to wrap it up. And I also want to thank all of our panelists from all over the world. Some of them are in the US, some of them are in the wee hours of the night in their own countries. So we are so grateful to all of you for being here and for participating in workshops throughout this month. And to our guests attending, I'm so glad that so many of you joined us tonight and hope that you are excited to learn more. Feel free to reach out to me. I can put you in touch with different university reps and answer questions. And yeah, I'm just glad this is happening. You know, a lot of people think that international ed is kind of this big, scary, ambiguous thing. And hopefully this dispelled a bit of the mystery and the uncertainty around it. So we're looking forward to sharing more with you. And I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks so much.